Welcome to the Glen Show, where we talk all things vegan. If you're not already vegan, no worries, we'll get you there. If you are, tune in for health advice, information on climate change, and all the damage done by our most destructive industry, animal agriculture. We'll also talk cooking, theater, film, and culture. My 2 reasons for starting this podcast: to entertain, to inform, and to make people vegan. Oh, that's 3. Shit. And welcome to the Glen Mercer Show. You could find us across all podcast platforms. You could find us on YouTube, and please remember to subscribe. You could find us at realmeneatplants.com. My special guest today comes to us from the Philippines. RG-Enriquez Diez is a content creator and a recipe developer of Filipino vegan recipes. She has a book called Filipino Vegan. Welcome to the show, RG.
Thank you so much for having me.
So tell us your story. You were born in the Philippines?
Yeah, I was born and raised here in the Philippines till I was 15 years old, and then my family and I moved to the Bay Area, California. And then I just recently moved back here to the motherland to further make vegan versions of Filipino food.
And when did you become a vegan?
This was during college, but it wasn't. This was a long time ago. This was before YouTube, before the fast internet. So it was just a nutrition class I took. It was far from being vegan, unfortunately. It had like really outdated info about nutrition, but it really made me so fascinated about what's in our food and what we put inside our body. Like, I didn't know that not only it tastes good, and I knew about vitamins and minerals and about that, but growing up, that it wasn't until I discovered the actual like direct effects and the benefits of mindful eating that led me to thinking about not wanting to consume any animal products. So it became for health, sort of, because I was told, oh, you should just eat turkey breast or chicken breast and salmon, and so I was doing that with no intention of going vegan. And then as I was practicing more and more mindful eating, it made me realize one day, without knowing any other vegans, that I just didn't want to hurt another animal. So that made a turn into something for ethical reasons as well. And being Filipino, that's usually taboo. Like, how can you eat Filipino food now if you are not going to eat meat? So I was actually, unfortunately, at that time, ashamed for feeling that way. I was like, this is so weird. I shouldn't. I'm not proud of that feeling back then, because I just felt isolated for feeling that way. But now I'm very proud of it, of course.
So when you were eating the Filipino diet growing up, was there meat 3 times a day?
It wasn't Filipino food growing up if there was no meat on the plate. It was like there's meat and then there's rice on the plate. And if there's veggies, it's usually like, like either a garnish or some sort of like just something that is like a side dish. So it's almost unimaginable, even if it's it's completely vegetables. There's still fish sauce or shrimp paste. So it was at least in my household, like, we have many islands in the Philippines, but at least growing up, that was it. Either it's the so-called options were beef, chicken, or beef, chicken, pork, and fish, and there was like nothing else. So yeah, it was almost ironic to say Filipino, or oxymoron to say Filipino vegan during the time. I mean, vegetarian was probably what was familiar back then as well. So vegan wasn't even in our, like,
Did you know,
Filipinos.
growing up, did you know any vegetarians even?
No,
Oh.
no. I loved eating the, this is so bad. I loved eating the fat, I wasn't like that kid was like, oh, no wonder. Like, of course, RG is gonna be vegan. She loved vegetables growing up. Like, I actually loved the fat, like iodized salt and fat, and that was, and rice, and the rice swimming in the fat. It was like, yes. And then my mom had to trick me to like, wasn't carrots your favorite? Like, really?
Mhm.
But I really did not like veggies at all. So I was the least candidate out of my family members to be vegan, but I didn't know any single soul back then who was even pescatarian, or even eating vegetables, like a lot of vegetables. So it really was a 180 turn. My family members were just so surprised that I just didn't want to eat meat anymore. But they were not mad at it.
Do you have siblings?
We're all four girls.
4 girls, and do the others eat the traditional Filipino diet?
Yeah, yeah. So until now, but they have become more open-minded. In fact, they would go to a vegan restaurant without me, especially now that I'm in the Philippines. They're like, I would just find out randomly they would eat at a vegan restaurant. So it's pretty cool that they have now opened themselves. Like, I didn't have to be there for them to be reminded that this is, like, they should try something purely plant-based. So, but we're not fully there yet. But I'm the
Right.
only vegan in the family still. Um, but they would incorporate vegan food into their into what they eat. So every once in a while. So that's a good start, at least for
How
me.
about your husband? Is he also a vegan?
Yes, yes. But when we met, he didn't even know what vegan meant, But like, it's another level to vegetarian,
Now,
he
when you met, were you already vegan when you met your?
Yes, because I
Okay.
was already vegan in college.
Okay.
So, and we met like in our late 20s.
Okay.
So, um yeah, and he was I you know it for some reason he got even more interested, but he was like always a steak guy. So I from the very beginning, when we first met, I was like, he was going to buy something like at a restaurant for me, because we were out with friends, and I said, oh no, I'm gonna eat.
Now,
I don't.
is your husband also Filipino?
He's also Filipino as well, but born and raised in the U.S.
Okay. And so, when you started dating him, you were vegan, he was not. Did you say to him at some point, this is a deal breaker, or how did he go vegan?
I got really lucky because he got interested right away. But so I was more into, okay, I was more into just dating at a time. So I wasn't, that time I wasn't looking for like, a husband yet during that time. So I was like, okay, you're not vegan. Okay, we'll just see how it goes. But he was actually the one who was more like, okay, what is it all about? And until now, so I got lucky in that sense that he really was really looking into what this world is all about.
Now, you became vegan when you were young, college age. So I'm guessing you didn't see any health changes, right? You were already young and healthy, or did you see any changes?
You know what? I would say my mood changed. Like, my mood got lighter. Um, I don't know if it was also just, yeah, I think it's also because of what I would put inside my body, what I would feed myself. So I'm generally happier than before I was vegan. More, yeah, it's just
Well, that's interesting. You became, a lot of people turn vegan, their cholesterol goes down, they overcome heart disease, they overcome diabetes. You got happier. It was a mood thing, but there is a
Well, if
scientific
you don't
basis.
feel all those ailments, then you're happy, right?
Right. But there's a scientific basis for that because meat causes inflammation. And inflammation goes through all the tissues of the body, including the brain. So there is a link between eating animal foods and eating depression. Since animal foods are not natural to the human body, since we evolved as cousins to the great apes, it's not natural food for us. It causes inflammation. The inflammation goes to the brain, and that could lead to depression. So I say to people who are depressed, before you try a pharmaceutical drug, why don't you try going vegan? How about your husband? Did he have any physical changes from going vegan?
Yeah, I mean, he works out a lot and he recovers really well, faster
Uh-huh.
than before. So
Okay.
yeah, it's the recovery from exerting, from exerting yourself from working out, from exercise. The bounce back is faster.
Okay. Now,
And
when
it's
did you?
never, sorry, before I forget. Also, Filipinos, unfortunately, to your what you were saying, has a lot of, with meat, has a lot of inflammation. Unfortunately, in Filipino diet, because it's so meat heavy, there's a lot of arthritis and gout. And so, although it hasn't really changed for my husband because he's never gotten it, but unfortunately, a lot of our family members of the same age and older, or even younger, already have gout. Um, so, and then they were told, oh, like, they cannot have soy, they cannot have beans as well, tofu, because it will even exacerbate their gout. But with my husband, um, he has he hasn't has never had to deal with that, even though he's been eating soy and beans and all that. So that's something that, so it just never became a problem for him.
Okay. Now, when did you write your book, Filipino Vegan? Do you have a copy
Uh,
of the book there to hold up?
yes, this is it.
There we
This
go.
was
Beautiful.
about last year. We launched last year, September last year,
Okay.
and it sold out within 2 months. So this
Wow.
was a yeah. Uh, it was amazing because we published and launched here in the Philippines. So my publisher was even thinking, oh, we hope to sell out hopefully within 2 years. But, being Philippines being so meat heavy, meat centric, we were surprised that it sold out within 2 months. But we reprinted, and we've also figured a way to also ship to the United States, because there are also a lot of questions, inquiries about Filipino vegan cookbook as well. So we made it available there as well. So super cool that people found value in the cookbook that they want another print.
Now, of course, all the recipes are vegan. Do you have, besides making the book vegan, do you have other health concerns as you do recipes? Like, do you try not to make the foods too fatty, or are there any other concerns you have as you do these recipes?
Yes, especially whenever I would get requests, because unfortunately, a lot of fellow Filipinos here in the Philippines and even abroad have a lot of, like I was saying, with hypertension, diabetes, and gout and arthritis. So they're even try to minimize salt as well. And my husband and I thought of also putting nutritional facts on each recipe, just so that's for transparency. So I also would put um, like disclaimer or notes, just saying, hey, you can cut back, or if you don't want it to have, let's say a certain ingredient, like cut back on salt or fat or oil, then you can replace it with this. So it has options. So we were very cognizant about that. And we also put nutritional facts. So at least not so much, we want to be as truthful as possible. So some desserts maybe as very indulging, but at least it's there so that they can figure out, okay, maybe I shouldn't have this every day, or maybe I can make some tweaks, which I also put some notes in there.
Right. I think oil is the ingredient that when you minimize it or eliminate it, it makes almost as much of a difference as when you go from being a meat eater to a vegan. There's just oil is 100% fat. So when you reduce it or eliminate it, it makes a huge difference in the health effects of the food.
Right. Yeah. And there are recipes, not just in this book. There was even another cookbook called We Cook Filipino, and it's not a vegan cookbook, but they've asked me to contribute the recipe. So that one actually has a low salt, and even has an option of no oil CC recipe. And I would do corporate cooking demonstrations here in the Philippines as well, where I would do no oil, showing them how it's actually very doable. Because there's a lot of stir fries, and we call it gisa here. It's just starting with garlic, onions, and tomatoes, and you simply use water instead when cooking them. Okay. So try to, as much as possible, inform people about the alternatives and still have them enjoy the result.
Tell us about the vegan scene in the Philippines. Are there more and more vegans? Are there vegan restaurants? Are there vegan groups?
You should visit. Have you ever been?
I have never bin, so I may have to visit.
Oh man, you should come down, especially this November. So November is we're gonna have an all vegan festival, and this happens every year. And this is actually
it's happened every year since when?
I believe 2016.
Okay, so it's a new tradition.
Yeah, so 2016, 2015, before the first time I got involved was with 2017, but even though it's relatively new tradition, it's the biggest one in Asia. It's the biggest vegan festival in Asia. So you should come down. We have so many.
Hold on a second. I can't do this alone. Honey, we have to pack for the Philippines. Okay, I'm back.
To-do list.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
it will be great to see you and your wife here. It's although it's going to be very tropical and warm. There's going to be great. I think it's also kind of tricky to navigate every day. The vegan festival, the Veg Fest Filipinas, it's sort of like a huge celebration, but I have to be honest that it can also be like just on a regular day, it can be hard to navigate around, especially if people eat out. Eat out with family and friends to figure out a way to stay or find Filipino vegan food. So that's why I try to, that's also part of what I would post on my social media. Like, okay, where can you eat? Or what can you cook if you're in the Philippines, so that you can sustain and even thrive in your Filipino vegan way of life. And it can be tricky if it's just like a regular day. But Veg Fest Filipinas, it's like, that's when we all just celebrate being Filipino and vegan. And it's also like, even just, non-vegans and non-Filipinos are also joining in the party. So it's super cool.
So it's a growing movement in the Philippines?
Yes. Exponentially growing every year. So they started very small and then just keep growing. I think thanks to, the technology, because before, there's no fast internet before. Now people can, watch documentaries on their phone. So the information is getting faster out, out there, getting faster. So Filipinos here get to learn more faster about, how to thrive and nourish themselves with, something that's purely plant-based and vegan, and also just still celebrate the Filipino culture.
Are
So
there a
it's
lot of
progress.
vegan content creators like yourself in the Philippines?
Yeah, I mean, not a lot.
Bloggers?
Yeah, not a lot, but there are, yeah, there's a community of us here for sure,
So
and
you all
growing.
know each other?
Is it? Yeah, I think once we're a tight knit community as well. So we would do sometimes we would there's a weekly all vegan uh farmers market, so we kind of know each other. Even in I'm sure in the US, right? Like you kind of like when you guys have a potluck, like you kind of know each other, so it's super cool to keep that going so that there's camaraderie, and it's just a nice wonderful feeling that you have a support system.
Okay, now tell us about the word Astig, because your website is Astig Vegan, and that's your Facebook and Instagram handle too, right? So tell
It's
us
in
the
your
definition
website.
of Astig, Astig.
What did you think it was before when you first?
Well, I first saw it, didn't know. I looked it up. I came across words like cool and badass. Uh, but tell us the whole, background of that word and how you came up with that as
Yeah,
your handle.
it was a Filipino slang. I think it started back in the 70s. It was sort of like a way to like, just you were right. That when the definitions like cool, badass, but it also was I was already in the US, and it was just, I'll start something fun. And at the time, have you heard of Post Punk Kitchen? It was Isa Chandra Moskowitz, and she was vegan at the time, and she was just making like fun cooking videos, and she was like, like just really, she was super cool. I was like, I want to like the Filipino representation of like cool and fun, and but it's vegan and Filipino. So I thought, Steve, yeah, a Filipino word, and then vegan, like, but caught on, and then I didn't realize that it also had something to do with, like tough and edgy, and usually paired with macho. And then they see me like, hi, I'm a Stig,
So
but I
is it a word associated with men more than women usually?
correct, yeah. It's like usually, a Stig, a Stig, but it's usually like a guy who so doesn't doesn't care. He would like, just really sort of like be macho about it. And but it evolved into something cool as well. It's sort of kind of going against the grain, and being able to come out like really something that admirable. So
Right.
so that's why I still chose it, because it still makes sense, because it's
Right.
sort of going against the grain with being Filipino and vegan, and
Yeah.
still coming out that something that you can still have fun with it, and you can still, it's a courageous thing to do, to be able to take care of yourself, take care of everyone around you, by being vegan. And so I thought it still fits, so I
Yeah.
still went.
Well, I like the whole idea of it because the truth is that it's we vegans who have to be tough. People think of meat eating as being tough, the tough guys who eat meat. But in fact, they're the super sensitive ones who,
Yeah.
if you ever say, the animal agriculture is destroying the planet, or if you ever point out that it's unhealthy, their feelings get hurt, you know?
Oh,
And we
yeah.
are the ones who are in the minority, and we're the ones who take a lot of flack, and we have to have a thick skin and be tough. So I think it's the vegans who are the tough ones and the meat eaters who are the oversensitive ones.
I agree, because we do have conviction at the same time. We're the ones who are just being ourselves, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
others feel threatened by that.
Yeah.
We're a stig, right?
Let's take a quick commercial break and we'll be right back with RG.
All right, if you've ever wanted to show off your plant-based lifestyle and do it in style, here's your chance. We have some of the most amazing t-shirts, hats, accessories, coffee mugs, and more at shop.realmeneatplants.com. We have statement t-shirts that will bring a smile to everyone's face. I love the I want tofu tonight tee. Plus, we have podcast tees, Real Women Eat Plants gear, Real Kids Eat Plants, and Real People Eat Plants, just in case men, women, and kids didn't cover it all. Yeah, we love you and love that you want to show off that healthy lifestyle of yours. Again, check out our high-quality gear at shop.realmeneatplants.com and enjoy.
And we're talking with RG-Enriquez Diez from the Philippines. She is a content creator and the author of the book Filipino Vegan. How do you come up with your recipes, RG?
Well, in the beginning, I started with family recipes, with my mother's recipes, and I looked at it and I wanted to preserve the traditional essence. So it's the approach is to keep it as is and just find the ones that are not vegan and find wonderful alternatives, and then so that it's still similar or nostalgic to some people when they still try it. So I try not to change too much of it when I try to make vegan versions of Filipino classics. But then there are also times when I just want to have fun with it. So it's sort of not necessarily a classic. So it's just something that, oh, it's seasonal, it's local, and it's fun to combine different spices. So I also share recipes for those. But when it comes to the Filipino classics, to find a vegan version, especially if I have to be cognizant of, people requested that they miss this so much now that they're vegan. So I try to make sure that I don't change that much. I preserve what's plant-based and then just look for the ones that are not plant-based and then look for certain substitutions.
Do you have certain favorite spices and flavors that you aim for in your Filipino cuisine?
Oh man, it's very tough. But I would say now that especially I'm back here in the Philippines, it's super nice to have nice tart vegetables again and fruits again. So tamarind for one, something that I noticed. I don't know if it's something to do with the weather or the availability, but it seems like Filipino immigrants, they're more sensitive to like, oh, that's too sour. But when here in the Philippines, they really embrace the tamarind soup, for example, like tart, like really, but tamarind still has some slight sweetness. So stuff like that. And that's just like one kind of souring agent. So now I'm starting to embrace sour agents, but also this is also new. I wasn't a fan before. Have you heard of bitter? Well, you've probably heard of bitter melon.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm usually not into bitter stuff, even as a vegan, but my palate has changed and I'm starting to, I think it started with arugula. Like arugula converted me to liking more earthy flavors. And do you like arugula or you're not really into arugula?
I have it most days, and with every bite I say to myself, this is healthy. So I convince myself to like it.
I don't know, maybe one day it will change for you and like it as well. But yeah, I was like, okay, I'll have or bitter melon was really something that even though I knew it was healthy, like I wouldn't even touch it. But now I'm starting to have more and more appreciation naturally for it. Like the flavor wise, it's not just, and it's great because it's highly nutritious anyway. So
Yeah.
um
My
yeah, so
sense
those are the flavors that I'm
my
really
sense is that when you eat bitter foods, those foods are more alkaline. And so that's very healthy. You want to eat some alkaline foods to neutralize any acid load you may have.
Oh, so that's cool. So that, kind of balance between the two
Y-
flavors then.
Yeah. So tell us an example of a classic Filipino dish and how you veganized it.
Okay. I would I would say, for example, there's this tamarind soup called sinigang, and it's very similar to, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Thai cuisine, but they have tamarind soup as well. So I would look, it's very rich in vegetables as well. It would have, string beans, okra, and kangkong or spinach, um, taro. But then it's very meat heavy because it would have pork and pork fat, lard just swimming on the soup. So and then there's also nilaga, for example, where it's like, then that's like beef soup, but it also has veggies. So my approach would be to double that, like for example, nilaga, add some more hardiness to it, so it's not, because I truly believe that it's not the meat that we the Filipinos love, what Filipinos loved about the dish. It was more of what they were sort of offering, right? So okay, hardiness, I'm gonna bring in hardiness, so I'm gonna um have saba bananas, which are like plantains, another kind of
What kind of bananas are they?
Saba is
Sabah.
S-A, yeah, yeah, you pronounce it just perfectly.
It's
Saba, yeah,
I may have some Filipino blood. I don't know.
yeah. You got it. So Saba, and it's a type, it's like very much like plantain, so it's really heavy, but party with with corn. And so these are familiar ingredients anyway that they would see in the nilaga soup, but I would make sure to highlight them. Mushrooms, and then there's this called tramel. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but it's a type of that looks like tripe, but it's not. So obviously, but it has a hardiness as well, and I believe it's the hardiness that people like. It's not so much because it came from an animal. So I would do that. I would also have squash, and then mash the squash into the soup so that it has some sort of sweetness in the broth. So those are kind of things that were already familiar for Filipinos anyway, but I highlight them so that, and then make them feel like you're gonna be full and happy and hearty when they eat this.
Do you use
Yeah.
jackfruit?
Yes, jackfruit was actually something that we've been using as a meat replacement or as a highlight of a dish even before pulled, pulled jackfruit was a thing in the US. Um, it was something that Filipinos do anyway. We would, so it's a fruit, right? So we would also have fruits as the main dish, which is super cool. It's sort of, a lot of people think that Filipino food is just super meat heavy, but there are also, it's usually a regional thing though, like a provincial regional thing where they highlight the vegetables. So jackfruit, yeah. So it's a great call to suggest that, because there will be jackfruit, and if there's a sort of a pulled pork, roast pork dish that now I was able to veganize using jackfruit. And it's super cool because Filipinos were like, oh yeah, of course, yeah, jackfruit. Yeah, we've been eating jackfruit in savory dishes for a long time. Yeah, so it wasn't so much of a, that's weird, it wasn't like that.
Mhm. How about mushrooms? Different types of mushrooms?
Yeah, so there's this, like I said, there's this type of mushroom called tremella, and it was really super cool. I discovered this when I dined at a vegan Vietnamese restaurant, and their fast food had that, and I was like, "What is that?" And I discovered that I can also just use that in Filipino cooking as well. So it was to, because unfortunately, it's not just in Filipino cuisine. It's not just the meat, but also like the innards and the insides, and which means tripe. And so I had to be really creative, and I would think, okay, if they miss this, or if they want a replacement for this, this was their childhood favorite, how can I make and offer a vegan version so that they will feel like they're still celebrating their heritage. Okay, so I definitely turned into mushrooms because there's also a lot of Filipinos also eat a lot from the sea animals. So there's mushrooms to replace squid, to replace all kinds of that chewy texture. So very, very handy. Although unfortunately, we don't have a lot of portobello here, but we work with what's available around us.
Okay. Now, do most people in the Philippines speak both English and Tagalog?
Yeah, you'll be fine when you visit. It's is that why you were
Well,
no
I'm just curious. There's a native language, Tagalog,
yeah.
but my sense is that most Filipinos speak English too, right?
Yeah, for
So
sure.
which
Oh,
language gets spoken more often when you go to the market or conducting everyday life? Which language gets spoken more often?
oh, definitely Tagalog for
Okay.
sure. I mean, um, we study and learn English since it's like a curriculum in school, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're all fluent, but we can understand. That doesn't necessarily mean we would speak, but if you, let's say, would visit here, we would have an idea of what you're saying versus maybe another country where we're like,
Right.
like no idea, but
Well,
we're here. It's actually very hard to speak purely Tagalog. It's almost like you're speaking Shakespeare, if you speak purely Tagalog, because there will always be an English word in every other sentence because it just got
right.
really much.
Right. And is that happening more and more? Is the Tagalog becoming more and more anglicized? And are people trying to fight back against that to try to keep it purer, more pure?
Not really.
Not really.
No resistance. I mean, it's super crazy how the kids here in the Philippines never left the country, never visited another country, and they would speak like they're from the US. And it threw me off. And I think it's something to do with, especially during the pandemic, all they watch are like YouTube videos, and they would, and the people that they would watch were like set in the US. So they have an American accent. So when I was growing up, I understand English, but I have like a different accent. But them, they were like, it's just immersion, I guess. But it doesn't mean that they don't speak Tagalog. But so it's still okay. I think it's super cool too. One thing that really humbled me though was that is why I went back to the Philippines, because it's hard to represent Filipino cuisine in the vegan sphere if I don't really do my homework. So when I went back, I was super humbled because when I was studying regional dishes, I would go to the region that popularized it, and they don't speak a lick of Tagalog, and they're Filipinos. So I was like, is this how Americans feel when they don't know another language? Because I'm like, I look like them, and we're both Filipinos. I have no idea what they're saying,
And they don't speak Tagalog, they speak what?
Another dialect. So
Okay.
it's Bisaya, Kapampangan. So it's like just like in Chinese, you know, there are other dialects. There's Cantonese, Mandarin, other dialects. So here there are also other but then growing up, never had that problem because I would never visit like these other regions. And then that really humbled me. I'm like, okay, I need to do more homework when if I'm to represent Filipino cuisine in the vegan world or in just, you know, in general, then I have to know, I have to be able to represent them as well.
Now, does Tagalog have any cousin languages that people in any other parts of
Country.
Asia
Yeah.
are have you know, understand some of it the way the Spanish and Portuguese are similar? Is anything similar to Tagalog?
Oh, for sure. I think Southeast Asia. However, I've never been, but I heard because I have Indonesian friends. We go to Indonesia, which is only a couple of hours away. There will be some. We will have the same Tagalog accent, but it's not Tagalog, and then some words were the same. But we'll just, you know, pick up keywords, which is a trip. We're like, what? And then we also have very similar physical attributes, and you know, with when I used to live in the US, of course there's some Tagalog that were Spanish, so you know, and I had Mexican friends, so we were also like, oh yeah, we all have the same word for that, you know, so it's cool.
Now, tell us your history of you came to the United States and you've been back and forth a few times, and tell us also when you get to the end of this story why you've returned to the Philippines now. But take us first to when you first came to the United States. That was as a teenager, right?
Yeah, when I was 15 years old. And
did you speak, how much English did you speak before you came to the United States at 15?
Very, I would say I wouldn't feel confident speaking in English during that time, but I can't, but I wouldn't feel confident because I would feel like people would laugh at me, or I would say something in wrong pronunciations, and I still do. But you know, growing up, it was very hard for me to adjust because I didn't know that we're gonna live there. And then once I found out, you know, first time being away from home, you're a teenager.
Right. So you went to high school in the United States?
Yeah, I went to high school, middle of school.
And what part of the States was this?
Union City, California is basically Bay Area, you know, near San Francisco.
Okay, so that must have been trial by fire to go to high school in a language that you weren't fluent in.
It's just on my first day of high school, I just like followed anyone speaking Tagalog, and I just followed the group that I heard, like, oh, who's speaking Tagalog? Hi guys, you know. I was so scared, and they were gracious enough to let me eat with them at the cafeteria. Because I heard you were speaking Tagalog, you know, it was such a great relief. But it was still very hard because I was very homesick. It wasn't my decision to leave, especially as a teen, you know, you're just already kind of want to hang out with already, you know, it's your circle. So, and I was also painfully shy at that time. So it was very hard. And, but so one thing that really cured my homesickness was Filipino food, because it was still my connection back home. You know, my parents, we all moved as a unit, so my mom would cook for us, and it was my connection to, you know, my identity, because you know, as a teen, you're also like just sort of figuring yourself out. So it was, and especially in a foreign land, now you have to call home, and I wasn't sure. I didn't go back here until after 13 years. So during that time.
Okay, so why did you return 13 years later?
Oh, that was just to visit with family. I think that time I was already vegan. Yeah.
Sure.
That time it was, I was newly vegan. So in college things sort of adjusted better because I was, finally finding my footing and finally making, new friends. I was able to figure out how to be not to be too shy anymore and speak up and speak English. And then I, became vegan after taking this nutrition class. But I also was like, well, do I have to stop eating Filipino food because I'm vegan now? And I just didn't want to give up my heritage, my what made me feel Filipino, especially because I was so away from what's Filipino. So, and I also didn't want to offend my mom, my family, because she was cooking for us, So I didn't want to say, I don't want to eat what you made for me, And so it was such a dilemma for me back then because I wasn't sure how they're gonna take it, and I also wasn't sure if I should even just give it up altogether, being vegan or eating Filipino food. So that made me think, well, can I do both? Can I still be Filipino, with celebrating my heritage, or and at the same time be vegan and celebrate it. So I was too shy, still shy, I guess. Even though it was already college, it was easier. But it turns out that my parents, were like, it's okay, you can be vegan. And they saw how serious I was. Like, they saw how much I was really into it. I think, when it comes to my parents, it's not so much that I'm trying something new, as long as I'm taking care of myself. They knew that it was coming from a good place, that I'm not harming myself. I'm actually taking care of myself. So that's why they supported it. And it was my mom who was like, I'll help you. Let's see how to make this taste just like how you would remember it. So she would critique what I would make. And that's what made me fall in love with cooking. I never thought I would like vegetables. Second, I never thought I would really fall in love with cooking. It wasn't until I became vegan that I actually felt more Filipino and more into cooking. So after that, there was like, okay, I may not be the only one, maybe other people would be interested finding out that this recipe exists. So that's when I started sharing. I was like, guys, I figured it out. My mom and I figured it out. There's a vegan way to do this. And I started vlogging, and then Astig Vegan. I was like, oh, something fun. And then it led to YouTube, and then led to people following
and you got a lot of followers on YouTube.
Yeah, I was surprised. I thought it would be controversial because I thought people would be like, what are you doing? Like, stop doing that.
But you didn't get a lot of flack?
No, I unfortunately, but I'll take it. People will be more like, I don't like her accent, or you should put your hair down more. It's like, I'm like, what? Like, why? But then again, I'm like, I'll take that over, like, that's not Filipino food, So I'm like, okay. And as it turns out, maybe for those people who think that that's not Filipino food, maybe they just don't watch it, because the ones that really want to, they watch it again and again, and they sort of, I found that I'm not the only one who felt alone or felt isolated at a time, that there are actually other people who were in the same situation as I was. So it became sort of a kindred spirit. We're like, okay, yeah, me too, like, here's a recipe. And for some people, it was because their wife is Filipina and they're vegan and the husband's vegan, or vice versa, and they kind of want to figure out a middle ground. Like, I found a Filipino vegan recipe. Some are like, they just really want to eat healthier, and they're like, okay, this is way better than what the original Filipino version. Let's try her version. So there were different reasons, and that was so exciting. And it was my husband who said, okay, now you have following. Now it's no longer just sharing your personal experience. What about representing, like, people from Cebu or for people who miss this and this and that, they were requesting, oh, you know, I grew up with this, and I found myself as the base getting bigger, that it's more than just my upbringing now. So if I to represent it, I have to really sort of like what he likened it to, if you want to learn about French food, you go to Paris. So it was like, okay, I have to, you know, pack my bags, go to the Philippines, study some more. And that's when we traveled to different places. That's when I learned like different dialects. I had no idea like how to, you know, communicate to, and it was super cool. And that led to a book deal. Coincidentally, somebody reached out, and that led to Filipino Vegan. And then after that, pandemic, during the writing process, pandemic happened. I was still kept writing, went back to my family in California. And then when sort of the lockdown eased down, that's when we packed our bags and came back here, because
Now, why did you come back this last time to the Philippines, and did it have to do with your career as a content creator?
Absolutely. We felt we can always be a content creator in the US. There are lots of Filipino vegan content creators in the US and in other countries outside the Philippines. It's not that it's impossible to do that. It's just that we felt that we're needed here more, because the vegan options in the US, when at least in the Bay Area, California, you know, it was already people were already familiar. It was like, oh yeah, there are vegan options at this omnivore restaurant, or they've already heard the word vegan. When we lived here in the Philippines, and until now, we will find ourselves having to explain what vegan means still. Or so I mean, there are, you know, there's a growing vegan population here in the Philippines, but it's still not compared to the progress in the US. So we felt like, well, if we really want to make a difference, we should stay here. We just want to help ourselves, you know, and make it really convenient for us. We can stay in the US. So it's sort of a sacrifice for us as well, because now we're away from our families as well. It's gonna be my husband's first time to be away from his family. So yeah, and my family migrated to the US and they stayed there, you know. So it was bittersweet, but we just knew that there's still much more work to be done here.
And are you able to create the Filipino dishes more authentically in the Philippines?
Well, because of the availability of the ingredients,
Right.
no. I mean, and it's, of course, you know, seasonally, and also we were able to study what Filipinos here think of vegans. So for example, they figured, oh, that's just for rich people,
Right.
or that's just for Western food, you know. So I don't think we were able to pick their brains if we were in the US. So because we were able to immerse ourselves in this environment, we heard what they were saying about what vegan is, or what they sort of perceive. We can then answer their questions. So aside from the recipes and how, like, no, now I have access to green tamarind instead of a concentrate. I was also able to learn their plight, their situation, how, you know, it was still a little bit of a culture shock in that sense, because now I'm an adult. I'm 42 years old now versus when I was 15. So yeah, it's a lot of lessons that I learned.
All right. Now, I don't know if you know of my friend, Dr. Silas Rao, who has an organization called climatehealers.org. But Silas believes that we have to turn the world vegan by 2026, which is just a few years away, in order to save the planet. That's 3 years. So when I first learned of that from Silas, it put so much pressure on me that I developed a hernia. and I had to have the hernia repaired, which went very well. But now I'm still dealing with this deadline of 3 years to turn the world vegan. So the Philippines, I believe, have about 113 million people. So I'm putting you in charge of that if I
Oh,
can.
great.
Yeah, because that's a little bit of a burden off my shoulders.
Okay, I'll take this
You take
territory
the
from.
Philippines, that's 113 million people.
Uh-huh.
And I'm kind of delegating
Take
this
the
around.
billions.
Yeah. Silas can have India. That's 1.4 billion.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I got to hurry up and get somebody for China. Let me make a note of that.
Oh,
China,
yeah.
China vegan. Hurry. Okay.
We have 2.5, actually, not even 3. Well, that's because almost the end of 2023, we only have a
Yeah.
few
Well,
months.
I think Silas says November 2026. I think it's
Ah,
November because his granddaughter will be 16 in November 2026. And he made her a promise that by her sweet 16 birthday, we have to turn the world vegan, which apparently is the same time that the planet needs to go vegan. So we got
we're
3
working.
years.
We're working on it. Well,
Yeah,
the
I don't
veg.
want to rush you 2.5 years to turn 113 million people vegan. That's rough, but you got 3 years, so you can take a deep breath.
Better
And
get back to work.
if anyone can do it, you can. RG, it's been a pleasure
Oh,
talking to you.
so
Are
so
there
much.
going to be any more books coming out?
I hope so. Right now, I'm just really just pumping out more recipes for people. They can get this, but also on in the U.S. and here in the Philippines through Amazon in the U.S. So the figure you gave me, they have access to this, so hopefully that will speed up the timeline of them becoming vegan. But there's the book, there are free recipes on the website as well, different recipes, but they're free on
And the
YouTube.
website is astigvegan.com. That's
Yeah.
ASTIG. It means badass.
Yep. Badass vegan. Yeah.
All right.
Filipino.
All right. RG, it's been great talking to you. People can find you at astigvegan.com. That's your handle on Facebook and Instagram too. And the book is called Filipino Vegan. Everybody should get it, and everyone in the Philippines should go vegan. Thank you, RG.
Thank you so much. This is such a pleasure and honor. Maraming salamat. Thank you.
This has been the Glen Mercer Show, where everyone listening turns vegan, regains their health, and annoys their friends and relatives. Find us on YouTube at The Glen Mercer Show and across all your major podcast platforms. Don't forget to subscribe.